There was a time when the moon did not exist in the Earth's sky, according to numerous ancient accounts. In ancient writings and traditions, one can find proof of a time when the moon did not exist. Democritus and Anaxagoras of ancient Greece mentioned that there was a time when no moon could be seen in the night skies. In describing the history of the Greek region of Arcadia, which is in the Peloponnese, Aristotle writes that the Pelasgians lived in the area since very old times, at a time when the moon did not exist. Apollonius from Rhodes mentions something similar. He talks about a time when not all of the celestial objects existed in the sky, before the time of Deucalion, which is Noah. Noah means man of good omen, Deukalos Ionos, meaning the man of good omen in Greek. Deucalion and his wife Pyrrha's generation before the cataclysm of the Great Flood, when the moon did not exist, and the only humans that existed were the Pelasgians living on the mountains of Arcadia, which is a region in Greece. These inhabitants of Arcadia were also known as pro-Selenes, meaning those that were before moon in Greek. In Plutarch's work Morals, we find the following. Quote, "They were Arcadians of Evander's following, the so-called pre-lunar people, or the pro-Selenes." End quote. Similarly, Ovid wrote, "The Arcadians are said to have possessed their land before the birth of Zeus, and the folk is older than the moon." End quote. Stephanus of Byzantium wrote, "Arcadians and females both exist before the moon." Hippolytus refers to the legend that Arcadia brought forth Pelasgus of greater antiquity than the moon. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. We have a reference to Pelasgus in the Old Testament, the book of Genesis. That's when the earth started dividing. Now, going back to this, Lucianos, in his astrology, says that the Arcadians affirm in their folly that they are older than the moon. Evidence has also been found in other parts of the world. In Bolivia, symbols on the wall of the courtyard of Calasaya, built in 13,000 BC. Remember, that's the time of the comet impact and the last ice age, when we had the Clovis culture extinction and also the extinction of the fauna and flora, the mammoths and the saber-toothed tigers. So he says, in Bolivia, the symbols of the wall of a courtyard built 13,000 BC provide evidence that the moon came into orbit around the Earth at a specific moment in time thousands of years ago, long before what mainstream historians refer to as recorded history. Moreover, the calendar gate in the same site provides evidence that a smaller satellite once rotated around the Earth. The oral traditions of Colombian Indians of the Bogota highlands in the eastern Cordilleras of Colombia referred to a time before the moon. In the earliest times, when the moon was not yet in the heavens, says the tribesman of Chibchas. Africa also provides its own evidence. According to Zulu legend, the moon was brought hundreds of generations ago by 2 brothers of alien form, Wowane and Panku. So what does this all mean? The ancient memory of the earth inhabited by humans without a moon has passed from generation to generations, forming a tradition of numerous civilizations. So how did the moon get here? Reference to Van Humboldt, English translation in 1814. Now, Earth without the moon? The period when the Earth was moonless is probably the most remote recollection of mankind, of course, goes all the way back. Democritus and Anaxagoras taught that there was a time when the Earth was without a moon. Aristotle wrote that Arcadia in Greece, before being inhabited by the Hellenes, had a population of Pelasgians, and that these aborigines occupied the land already before there was a moon in the sky above the Earth, For this reason, they were called the Proselines, the pre-lunar people. Apollonius of Rhodes mentioned the time when not all the orbs were yet in the heavens before the Danae and Dephkaliona races, Dephkaliona being Noah, came into existence, and only the Arcadians lived, of whom it is said they dwelt on mountains and fed on acorns before there was a moon. Just remember the acorns, oak trees and acorns, the Druids. Dris, the ancient Druid word, comes from the word Dris in Greek, and there were a lot of Druids. There were pagans, of course, before Christianity spread throughout Europe. There was Druids, the religion of Druids. Now, Plutarch wrote in the Roman Questions, quote, there were Arcadians of Evander's following, the so-called pre-lunar people. Similarly wrote Ovid, the Arcadians are said to have possessed their land before the birth of Jove, or Zeus, and the folk is older than the moon, end quote. Hippolytus refers to a legend that Arcadia brought forth Pelasgus of greater antiquity than the moon. And Lucian, in his astrology, says that the Arcadians affirm in their folly that they are older than the moon. Censorinus also alludes to the time in the past when there was no moon in the sky. Some allusions to the time before there was a moon may be found also in the scriptures. In Job 25:5, the grandeur of the Lord, who, quote, makes peace in the heights, end quote, is praised, and the time is mentioned, quote, before there was a moon and it did not shine, unquote. Also in Psalm 72:5 it said, thou wast feared since the time of the sun and before the time of the moon, a generation of generations. And a generation of generation means a very long time. Of course, it is of no use to counter this psalm with the myth of the first chapter of Genesis, a tale brought forth from exotic and later sources. The memory of a world without a moon lives in oral tradition among the Indians. The Indians of Bogota Highlands in the eastern Cordilleras of Colombia relate some of their tribal reminiscences to the time before there was a moon. In the earliest times, when the moon was not yet in the heavens, said the tribesmen of Chibchas, there are currently 3 theories of the origin of the moon. 1. The moon originated at the same time as the earth, being formed substantially from the same material, aggregating and solidifying. These are all theories, of course. 2. The moon was formed not in the vicinity of the earth, but in a different part of the solar system, and was later captured by the earth. 3. The moon was originally a portion of the terrestrial crust and was torn out, leaving behind the bed of the Pacific. All 3 theories claim the presence of the moon on an orbit around the earth for billions of years. Mythology may supply each of these views with some support. Genesis for the first view, the birth of Aphrodite from the sea for the third view, Aphrodite's origin in the disruption of Uranus, and also the violence of the sun. The Babylonian moon seems to support the second view. Since mankind on both sides of the Atlantic preserved the memory of a time when the earth was without a moon, the first hypothesis, namely of the moon originating simultaneously with the earth and in its vicinity, is to be excluded, leaving the other 2 hypotheses to compete between themselves. Now, we have seen that the traditions of diverse people offer corroborative testimony to the effect that in a very early age, but still in the memory of mankind, no moon accompanied the earth. Since human beings already populated the earth, it's improbable that the moon sprang from it. There must have existed a solid lithosphere, not a liquid earth. Thus, while I do not claim to know the origin of the moon, I find it more probable that the moon was captured by the earth, and such an event would have occurred as a catastrophe. If the moon's formation took place away from the earth, its composition may be quite different. There is no evidence to suggest whether the moon was a planet, a satellite of another planet, or a comet at the same time of its capture by the earth. Whatever atmosphere it may have had was pulled away by the earth by other contacting bodies or dissipated in some other way. Since the time of the moon began to accompany the earth, it underwent the influence of contacts with comets and planets that passed near the earth in subsequent ages. The mass of the moon being less than that of the Earth, the moon must have suffered greater disturbances in cosmic contacts. During these contacts, the moon was not carried away. This is due to the fact that no body more powerful than the Earth came sufficiently close to the moon to take it away from the Earth for good, but in the contacts that took place, the moon was removed repeatedly from one orbit to the other. The variations in the position of the moon can be read in the variations in the length of the month. The length of the month repeatedly changed in subsequent catastrophic events, and for this there exists a large amount of supporting evidence. In these later occurrences, the moon played a passive role, and Zeus in the Iliad advised Aphrodite to stay out of the battle in which Athena and Ares, that is Venus and Mars, were in the main contestants. A reference from various ancient texts here. The source is varchive.org, and this on Humans Are Free. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.